Welcome into the Fourth Floor, an extension of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks to our sponsors, Biscayne Bay Brewing, the official beer of the Five Reasons Sports Network and of the Miami Marlins. We actually made some moves today. Check out the kiosk for Biscayne Bay. It's over at the 100 level and the 300 level. They got the Regatta Double IPA, of course, the Tropical Bay IPA, the Marlins Lager, and the Pastime Pilsner, the Miami Pale Ale. They've got all of that here. I don't know if they have all of that here. They definitely have the Tropical Bay IPA. Also, ask for it when you're at your local, Winn-Dixie, Publix, Whole Foods, any of those shops. They have it there. They also have it at many restaurants in town, including one of our partners, Quarterdeck. They got the Tropical Bay IPA on the menu there. So drink local. This is great local beer, and they sponsor the Five Reasons Sports Network. Make sure you check them out. Also, check out markbrownpa.com. This is the guy that you go to, the man with a plan. If you need an estate plan, give him a call, sit down with him, have him go over your future, especially if you're young with a family, need to take care of this now. He has an in-house law firm there. They handle just about everything. So reach out to him at 954-566-5678. Again, they do probate, but a whole bunch of other stuff there. And they can handle your closing for you there, too, if you're in the real estate market, either selling or buying. So it's 954-566-5678. Free case evaluation. Mention 5 reasons. MARCBrownPA.com. All right, let's get to it. I'm here at the arena with some somewhat shaky wireless, so I appreciate you guys hanging on here and waiting. We've got Jonathan Ramlicon, we've got Brady Hawk, we've got Ricky J. Mark, we've got Greg Sylvander, and we've got Alejandro Villegas. Make sure you check out the episode that Alex and Greg and I did yesterday with Gad and with Brady on where the Heat stand after 20 games. We did it from both a strategic and also a statistical point of view. The news today, I'll just get to it. I know already, but I'll ask Brady. Who's in, who's out?
Yeah, it's a pretty big injury report with Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero heading it. Hero, it's the same illness thing. They marked it as body soreness, but it just seems like he's sick. And then Jimmy had that fall in the first half last game that he played through, and now it's probably just was sore, and they were kind of looking over it. The other one is Nikola Jokic is playing. That was just reported. So this is going to be pretty tough one for Miami. As Spoelstra said before the game, that this is you can't really believe it all the way, but they said this is about basketball. Like they're putting that other thing in the rearview mirror. That's not really always going to be the case throughout a game, especially when Udonis Haslem seems like he could be next up in the rotation tonight.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well, didn't it? Also, you can't really put it aside when the Heat wouldn't be so thin tonight if they had Markieff Morris, which they still don't have. We're looking at 11 games right now, so I'm sure that they recognize that. That's the case, Greg. I was watching Caleb Martin out on the court. I would assume he's the starter tonight. He can replicate some Jimmy things, right? And then you leave Strus on the bench. You don't have Hero to insert for Jimmy. So I guess a lot of Strus and Vincent off the bench tonight with Dedmon, maybe Omer, maybe UD.
These can be fun. I know that people are probably bummed out because you want to see Jimmy, you want to see Tyler, and I want to see those guys too. But I think a high-usage Bam game and Duncan high usage, Kyle having to shoulder more of the offensive load, those are all good things. So to me, let's not forget Denver is shorthanded as well. They're missing a lot of guys, and they're reeling off of the news that Michael Porter Jr. is done, and they don't know when he's coming back. They say he's going to make a full recovery, but they don't know. Those back surgeries can be weird. So this is a team that I think mentally is in a weird spot themselves. So I don't necessarily look at it as, although Miami is shorthanded, that they're necessarily outmatched outright in this game.
Yeah, it's a couple of interesting things there. Again, you mentioned guys that have to step up. They're all the guys we've talked about lately, right, Jonathan? Lowry, Bam, and Duncan, right? Like there's no one to save them tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have that cop-out where you can just get the ball to Jimmy Butler and he can start getting to the free throw line, slowing the game down, and we can kind of pick it up from there. We're going to have to get it going from the start. I know without Jimmy, I think we're going to see a lot of dribble handoffs with Bam and Duncan, probably get him going on high volume. But to your point, Kyle Lowry is going to have to shoulder a little more of that offensive load, right? He's a guy that we've seen in previous years being able to get to the line as well, being able to get to the rim as much as we haven't seen that this year. But I think he's going to have to shoulder more of the scoring load as well as setting everybody else up. So I think those are the three most important players tonight that are going to have to absolutely step up. I think Bam only had 9 shots in the last game. He's going to need to at least double that for us to get the win tonight.
Ricky, Jokic is playing. I think we all anticipated he would come back, but Greg's right. I mean, Denver's reeling. This was a title contender, and they just paid Michael Porter Jr. And now, again, back injury. You don't know when he's coming back. I don't know that they're going to rush Murray back in these circumstances. It didn't look like he was going to be back for a little bit of time. Anyway, I mean, a lot of it falls on Jokic tonight, right? Like, I mean, the spotlight's going to be on him. He's never really been in this position in the NBA. Like, he's not a villain type typically. I mean, he's who I'm watching tonight.
Yeah, I think he's going to dominate. He's Nikola Jokic. He's the best center in the league. And the Boston Celtics were also reeling when they came to Miami and blew them out. Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero being out is going to be very painful for this Heat team. I like to be very, objective and straightforward when it comes to the situation. It doesn't look good for Miami tonight, if we're being completely honest. They just came back from somewhat of a road trip, and two of their best scorers, not just players, but scorers, which they're going to need to keep up with this Denver team, are going to be out. Aaron Gordon has been a bit of a mediocre / disappointment type player, but assuming he's even there tonight, I don't see how Miami has an answer for that. I mean, yes, Heat culture, next man up. We've talked about that. We've even had instances of that here in this pregame. But the reality is, we're not. It's like if we were to go up against the inside the NBA pregame. Like it's tough. Like this is a.
I mean, Denver's lost 6 straight,
easy.
so they're due for a win.
Exactly. Yeah. And Miami has Miami has had to deal with multiple trap games thus far this season. I remember before the Boston Celtics game, I warned about this being a trap game. I saw some eyes rolling. This could be it. And ultimately, I think this is going to be one of the more anticlimactic games this season. I know I'm wearing the robe because I'm trying to fit into the whole boxing motif, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
A Knicks-colored robe.
It is a Knicks color. Well, it's okay.
It's red and blue, but
we're gonna have to have Ricky on when we have Chris Herring on to talk about his book because I'm gonna make sure we got a few copies of that one. Brady, the Bam thing, and I feel we dove into this a lot last night on the podcast, but there does come a time where if you're healthy enough to play, and apparently he's playing, he hasn't taken time off. They don't have Morris behind him. Dedmon's, but some of these minutes, I know Christian Hernandez posted some numbers that, they've been better with Dwayne Dedmon on the floor than with Bam Adebayo on the floor in most lineup combinations this year. Like that can't happen. Like there's no excuse for him tonight. Physical, I get, but in terms of others who have the ball tonight, like this has to be Lowry's getting the ball to Bam, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think for one, the Dedmon metrics are just absolutely ridiculous this season. I think a lot of it's because he's playing next to Hero, and Hero's been on an incredible run where all of the offensive metrics kind of go up. But either way, it has been that case. And I think with Bam, we talked about this last night on the pod that Jimmy and Bam are the mid-post killers, and they keep going to them in that spot. No Jimmy tonight. It's going to be an increased volume for them in that spot where it cannot be just kickouts all night. Like Jokic can do that because he kills you in the scoring and he puts so much pressure on you that they have to send a double every time he gets it, and then he kills you from there. You cannot come out the gate and be that passer and then rely on that later. Like you have to be the scorer in the mid post in a Jokic type way if you want to beat Nikola Jokic, especially without Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler. So it seems like that's going to be the way. I saw somebody say about Lowry and Bam pick and rolls. It seems like they're going to have to spam that a lot more today, especially when you're putting, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, Vincent off the ball so much and trying to value them in that way. It just seems like you're going to have to spam that a lot more. And a lot of that is going to be just Bam shooting the ball more than anything. Like we talked about him driving, but if he can just shoot the ball and make them change their defense even a little bit, then you're in a decent spot tonight.
Jonathan, this is kind of a provocative question. If I could say to you right now that one of the two guys could dress tonight and would help them more against Denver, would you pick Jimmy or would you pick Tyler?
Jimmy, for sure. I mean, he does a lot more. Don't get me wrong.
Does everybody agree with that first before I let Jonathan continue?
Yes.
No.
I don't agree. I mean, go ahead, John. I'll let you finish, but that's why I said it's a provocative question.
So the reason I think Jimmy's just more important, I mean, defensively, he's an absolute animal, right? He plays free safety better than anybody else in the league, and he's able to get steals. I think he ended up with 5 steals last game, even with a sore tailbone. So dude's an absolute animal off the ball. And offensively, what he does for us not only is just the scoring, while everybody else's free throws have dropped during the, from last year to this year with the new officiating, Jimmy Butler has been able to keep that same consistency getting to that line, and that consistency and allowing us to slow the game down and set up everything on defense is really what allows us to be a really good team, because we have multiple gears we can kick it in. Like you said, with Hero, he can get going, and he has that really gunslinger type mentality. I think Jimmy Butler is kind of that running back style we talked about, where he can grind the game down, slow it down, keep the time of possession on our side, so that way we end up with the win. So Hero can do, like you said, get explosive, score a bunch of points, definitely win us a few games, but I think Jimmy overall would be more important for us.
I obviously I agree that Jimmy's the more important player to the Heat in general. I think Tyler would help them more tonight. I don't know. Right?
I just want Jimmy on the same court as Jokic because I want to see them interact. So that's
well. All right. So let's get to it, because I know that's what everybody.
I know
that's what everybody. That's what I was gonna say. I know that's what everybody wants to talk about. So let's get to it. Okay. I mean, Eric said that nothing's gonna happen tonight. I mean, does anything happen? I mean, UD's going to play most likely now because of the circumstances, I think. Okay, right? I mean, as soon as Eric sends him out there, it's going to be perceived as some kind of a message. But I'm still leaning that there's nothing. Maybe the most might be technicals both ways, and that's it. Greg, you think it'd be more?
Well, I think that it would be naive of us to not recognize that Markieff Morris still being out now, when they meet again, like nobody foresaw that. I think it's naive of us to think that the team is not thinking about that. Not that they're going to do anything malicious, but they're going to foul. There's no layups.
Yeah, I think the league watched at the end of that Denver Heat game too. The officials watched at the end of that Denver Heat game too. They pay attention to the chatter just like a lot of people. Not only that. Yeah, well, I think they do. I think at this point...
No. They do. They do.
Oh, yeah, because I think at this point, there's most likely there was a meeting between the officials, either the ones that are going to be officiating the game tonight, or just generally. You saw what happened at the end of Denver. We're not having that. Set the tone early, tee somebody up if necessary, and just keep the ball moving, which kind of feeds into the worries that I've been having about Kyle Lowry. I know we've been talking about Kyle Lowry, Bam pick and rolls, but if he gets an early tech, that could shift the momentum of a game potentially, and potentially affect his mood if he, God forbid, ends up frustrated and loses his composure. These are all things that are possible.
The most likely guy I think tonight to deliver the hard foul is PJ Tucker. It strikes me that of the guys who's going to play, I mean, it's not Bam's style. No. Vincent plays hard. Caleb plays hard. I don't think there's going to be more than that. I can tell you guys that in LA, hung out with the officials a little bit between the two games, and I met an official who was actually, I'm not going to say which one, but one of the three officials found out that night that he was assigned to November 29th, Miami and Denver, and his response over a glass of wine was "fuck." Okay, so they are aware of it. Okay, I could just tell you that, and maybe after the game I'll tell you which official it was. But a very nice guy, I will say. By the way, when you meet officials after games at the bars, they're actually good people. I know we scream at them all the time while what's going on, but some of the best people I've met in the NBA are the officials. They got a rough gig. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to some of the picks here tonight. It sounds like I'll let Ricky start because it sounds like you have the most concerns.
Yeah, I do. I mean, let's say PJ Tucker does deliver that hard foul and the officials send a message by giving him an F2. Not only is he out for the rest of that game, potentially suspended for the game after that, which I'm sure Miami needs to win after a potential loss tonight. Once PJ gets knocked out of the game, who backs him up with everybody else injured? That's the thing that's one of the reasons why I really do believe it's going to be a very anticlimactic Heat loss tonight. I'm not normally the type that wants to, at least this season, predict a Heat loss, but I think the Nuggets are the better team right now, especially with Jimmy struggling a little bit even before he was out tonight, Hero being out, Bam coming up small against bigger centers, and then that leaves you with a 35-year-old Kyle Lowry who, as we talked about before, can't seem to get in front of anybody anymore.
That is a very pessimistic approach.
Sure, give me the balance, Greg. I'm ready for it.
We shall balance each other out. I think Denver's actually been really bad. They've lost, what did I say?
Six in a row.
They have a minus 89 point differential over their last 6 games. That's their worst 6-game stretch since 2014. So like they're playing like really bad right now. And I do think that there's some trap game to this. So I'd be lying if I said I feel 100% comfortable, but I never have picked another team other than the Heat. So we're going Heat tonight again.
Brady, go.
Yeah, I think when we look at the Heat side, I feel like we've talked a lot of guys stepping up. I feel like this is the ultimate game for Duncan to step up. We've said this so many times, but like no Jimmy Butler, no Tyler Hero, all eyes are going to be on him. This is the perfect time to have a breakout type efficient high volume. Like he's had the high attempt and he's had high threes, but if you have to have an efficient night in this type of game, this would be the night to do it. I think if you're going to win this game, you have to have two of your lower level role players step up. They got that basically last game in Vincent and Strus. Can they do that again? I don't know. I think this is a game where Miami stays close, and then by the end of the third, the second stringers just kind of can't keep up.
Before we go to Jonathan, Alejandro, I know you posted in the comments. You chime in. They win tonight?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think they win tonight.
All right, Jonathan.
Ooh, I saw that
Yeah,
comment.
I'm going to have to go with the Heat, right? I think that this is going to be a game that Coach Spoelstra really shines. I felt like towards the end of the Chicago game, he put a great defensive plan together to limit Chicago, especially DeMar DeRozan. Aaron Gordon, Monte Morris, Facu Campazzo, all shooting over 40% in the last 5 games from deep. So I know Miami likes to give up a lot of open looks. We can't do that to this Denver team. That's going to be the way this falls into a trap game. But, man, I'm dressed for a fight. I know the Heat are dressed for a fight. We're going to get it going. The Heat get it done. We get a win.
Jonathan is our MMA guy, by the way. So if you were wondering, that's why he's got the gloves on. Here's the thing. I think they win tonight, and I haven't been optimistic about certain games, but here's why. I think the officials are going to officiate Jokic really tight tonight because they don't want anything happening. And I would not be surprised if Jokic ends up with 2 early. And if that's the case, they can't do anything. Okay, you look at what they've done over the past few games. And I also think a couple things. One, I don't see this as a trap game because Cleveland's next. Well, 2 things. One, Cleveland's next, okay, of course. But also, Jimmy and Tyler. But they've been they lost Sexton for the season too. And here's the other part of it is that with the Jimmy and Tyler out, I think that takes the trap game part out of this. I think sometimes the Heat play down to opponents when they think they're better than the opponent. I don't think the guys that are on the floor tonight, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, take that kind of attitude. It's just they might be better off, actually, for a game like this, playing kind of their scrap heap guys, honestly. And then I think Spoelstra coaches them to it. They've been waiting for this, and I think they're going to get Jokic out of his game enough. And I just don't see enough on. I just don't see enough on Denver right now. They're a finals contender that knows they're not a finals contender anymore. The life has been taken out of their season. They're not going anywhere without both Murray and Porter supporting Jokic. And once you know you're playing for nothing, I don't know. I don't. And also, they didn't pay for the whole the altercation. Jokic missed 1 game. They didn't pay for the altercation. The Heat have. That's a different mindset coming into the game. So I like the Heat.
In the West.
They earned it.
Well, that's a whole other debate, and we can certainly have that one. All right, Alejandro, thanks for producing this game. Oh, do you have a prize mix tonight, Greg? With the code 5?
I do. Duncan Robinson is at 11.5 points. Go over on Duncan Robinson and don't think twice.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. If he doesn't go over tonight, that's
we
what
got to
the
have a conversation.
Show is going to be about. And also, here's the thing. Bam. He's got to go 20-10 or over tonight. Has to, okay?
He's 18.5.
You heard that, Gad? You heard that?
Has to go 20-10 tonight. No excuses. Knee may be bad, whatever. You're going against an elite guy. You are considered an elite guy, and you don't have two of your other big 3 on your team. Because I don't really consider Lowry one of the big 3. I consider Tyler there now. Conversation for another day.
Points.
All right. PrizeMix.com. Use the code 5. Have a good night. Oh, stick with Alejandro.
Post up. Paces and spaces.
Post up. Paces and spaces. Halftime. Post up.
You,
Sean. Game.
Oh, brother.
So what they wanted to say was pace and spaces at halftime on Twitter. So as soon as the second quarter is over, you guys can go over to Twitter and join them. Pace and spaces from the Biscayne Bay Brew account tonight, according to our friend Sean Rochester. So go ahead and do that. And then right after the game, as soon as the second half is over, the fourth quarter, you can come over here to the YouTube channel. We're going to have the post-game show. So let's go ahead and let's play a little bit of the podcast that Ethan, Greg, and Alex did with Gabe and Brady over the first 20 games for the Miami Heat this season.
In the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're also on Dash Radio on their Nothing But Net channel. That's every single weeknight at 7 p.m. Also, check out the 5 Reasons YouTube channel, an hour before every game, before floor, right as the game ends. Post Up 5R, hosted by Royal Shepherd, who I just figured out is 4'6". That's a shout out to you, Royal. Also, check it out for the latest Dolphins content. The Dolphins have won 4 in a row. I was there today. Tua has completed 90% of his passes over the past 2 weeks. So you might want to check out the pre and post game shows there. Also, 5reasonsports.com, 5reasonsports.com for the latest from Brady and Gad and others, and you'll be hearing from them today. And of course, that is free. We don't have a paywall. And the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We have the way for you to play fantasy, and we have the way for you to bet. And for both ways, it is the code 5, F-I-V-E, for daily fantasy. You go to Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, play the up downs, go with the power play, go with the flex play, depending how far you want to go in. Just deposit $20. They're going to match your deposit. You got really very little to risk there. And that's the bonus, but then you can also bet more if you want. But you can play 2, 3, 4, 5 players together. You can play NFL, NBA, NHL. We're going to start doing regular Prize Pick shows. You can catch those on Before Floor where we guide you. If you want to bet, go to betus.com. That's betus.com. They give you 125% bonus when you use the code 5, F-I-V-E. They got the live betting platform. Unfortunately, I decided to go in and play Alabama -2.5. What the hell are those rules in college football? Go to betus.com. That's betus.com. Use the code 5. That's the way you want to gamble. You know that there was this other app that was out there, but I don't think people are going to be using that one very long. Go to betus.com. Use the code 5. Prizepicks.com, the same, code 5. And now, tonight's episode. All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Here is tonight's floor plan. We literally have 5 on the floor tonight. I think this is the first time we've actually done that. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. You can follow Greg Sylvander at Greg Sylvander. You can follow Alex Toledo at Tropical Blanket, although if you're watching here on YouTube, for some reason, his name is also Ethan Skolnick. You can follow Gadiel Cartagena at Gad Cartagena. And make sure you use, yeah, right, exactly. Make sure you use Carta if you want to spell that correctly. And of course, you can follow Brady Hawk at Brady Hawk 305. And I feel like Brady has paparazzi following him now, so you may want to just trail them. Here's what we're going to do, okay? The Heat have played 20 games. They're 13-7. And I think most people before the season would have taken that. If you looked at the schedule, you looked at all the road games, 13 road games, ton of playoff teams on there, not a lot of gimmies. I think you would have definitely taken 3rd and 7 and 2nd in the East. Of course, when you start to break it down from a micro perspective instead of a macro perspective, you can say, well, maybe they should have beaten Minnesota. Maybe they could have beaten Indiana. Maybe they should have won at least one of those 2 games in LA, right? So there are games that they certainly could have won that they didn't win, but they have wins against Chicago, against Brooklyn, 2 against Utah, 1 against Milwaukee. I know not everybody played for Brooklyn and Milwaukee in those games, but the wins still count. And the Heat obviously have missed some players. Bam missed some time. Jimmy missed some time. Lowry missed a game. Heroes now missed a couple of games. So their 4 best players have missed time. Markieff Morris has been out 10 games off of their bench. So they haven't been totally healthy either. But we're going to break this down 2 different ways tonight. Check out Gad's story on 5reasonsports.com. He broke it down by the numbers. Brady broke it down by the strategy. We're going to start here with Gad. And I just want you to I want you to lay it out for us. Okay. What were some of the key things that you found? And I know you did it after 19 games, but it still applies after the Chicago game. What were some of the key sort of trends that you found through the first quarter poll of the season?
So for the first, I guess we'll go with 5 takeaways here. The most important one to me, at least, was what we've seen from Tyler Hero. I think what you've seen from him just overall increases the ceiling of this team. We didn't know what he was going to be going into the season. And looking at the numbers, he's playing like an elite pull-up shooter. He's playing like an absolutely elite pull-up shooter. If you look at pull-up shooting, like how many points per game they're getting, the effective field goal percentage, he's technically 4th behind, I believe, Kevin Durant, DeMar DeRozan, and Trae Young. And then he's ahead of guys like CJ McCollum, Devin Booker, Zach LaVine, Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, and we can keep going. that's a really elite group to be in the conversation with. And I know he put a target on his back going into the season, but that probably would be my biggest takeaway. There's also some stuff about Bam being a shooter, the rebounding percentage actually being an elite strength of this team, as well as Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry and how they've regressed and how it's been a little bit confusing because it's been the catch and shoot that's gone away. But I think there's a lot more positive from the first quarter of the season than there is negative, although you might not see that if you read the timeline.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you led with Tyler because, when I think about this season, there's micro and there's macro, right? And like, yes, we can dissect the micro stuff, but I also think about like just long term, like the best thing that could have happened for this organization has happened through the first 20 games, and that's Tyler Hero has ascended to a different level. And you brought that up, and I think it's a great place to start. And I guess to that degree, because he's become such a flat out scorer, let's talk about Bam, like the growing pains of turn. Like you talked about him, Riley's comments about him becoming a flat out scorer and how that hasn't gone as planned. I'm interested to dissect that more because Tyler's ascension, I feel like we've been raving about that long enough, but I think the Bam stuff is more interesting go forward in terms of like what it means for the rest of the season.
Yeah, with Bam, it's a little interesting because obviously we haven't seen what we wanted to. He's taken a few more shots. He's taken some shots that maybe you don't love, like the turnaround fadeaways. He's taken a bit too many of those this year, and it's obviously a very low percentage shot. No player in the NBA outside of Hall of Famers are really going to do great with that. But with Bam, I really just think you've seen a player that is attempting to take that step as a scorer, trying to get to the rim a little bit more. Some of that is by virtue of playing with Kyle Lowry, but you've seen someone who is predominantly a jump shooter, and he's just struggling as a jump shooter right now. So until those shots fall, you're not really going to see that scoring jump from Bam, but there is the groundwork laid for him to maybe get to that 21, 22 points per game. But it is going to take a correction in efficiency because his shooting's down across the board from last year.
So I want to shout out Gad here because this is a great article. This was a top-notch article, but not only that, was like an actual statistical case, right? Like this could be put like a journal, like an actual like educational journal or whatever the proper term is.
He brought out the PowerPoint slides, the graphs, Power BI.
It was
Pie
so
charts.
good though. Like it was.
We didn't even think we could use pie charts on 5reasonsports.com. I had to send it to Brady to get it on the site.
Technology.
But seriously, like, so between the Bam thing, right? Noticing the difference in efficiency from last season to this season in jump shots was the biggest thing that stood out to me there. It's something that logically makes sense when you just look at it like, okay, he's taking more of those. We wanted him to take more of those. Sometimes he's taking them too much. Like he's taking them sometimes, especially in home games where like a guy is right on him. It's not always when he's wide open. I think that's, like God said in the story, part of the growing pains. And we've always kind of lamented him not going to the rim as much, and I don't have the free throw numbers pulled up right now, but he's been really good at it this season. So it's hard to say, get to the rim more often. I think it's looked a little bit worse recently. I don't know if it's the knee tendonitis or whatever, but overall, especially earlier on in the season, I think he's kind of shown that he's more confident. I think that's something that's everybody has been able to see, but I thought Guy did a really good job. You guys should actually like check out the story because I'm not going to go over all the numbers here. Shout out to Gad for the Tobias Harris shot here that I'm not going to give away. And then he went over the pull-up shooting. Hero's pull-up shooting was completely underrated by all of us coming in. I thought Lowry's pull-up shooting was going to be a bigger weapon, and Hero's pull-up shooting has been by far the bigger weapon. And they needed those types of drop killers and like guys who could actually hit those shots, right? And then the last thing that's most important to me here is the rim pressure stuff towards the end of the article. This might be the most important one. They were in the bottom of the league in like drives per game. I just think I didn't realize it was that low, right? You would think that their shot profile compared to last season, just by the eye test, is a lot more stuff in the paint. But I feel like the Heat are a team that looks to touch the paint more than to actually score in the paint. So I think that's the most interesting thing I took away from all of this.
And Gad, to follow on that, we talk about rim pressure. And I mean, you mentioned it. It feels like the answer to that is on the roster, but not active, right? Like, I mean,
you take a look at what they're currently doing. I don't know that the rim pressure is going to significantly increase with the way that Lowry's playing. He was a little more aggressive, particularly early in the game against Chicago, after you posted the article. But I just don't see it. I don't see this as a team that's going to do a ton of that until Victor Oladipo is back, right? Like, I mean, we always do this. It's like Vic at 70%, Vic at 80%, Vic at, but let's say it's the Vic that I can't imagine he's going to be worse off than he was last year if they did the surgery correctly, right?
Yeah.
So
So he was 12, 3.5, and 3.5, like essentially.
Okay, so let's start with that as a baseline. Okay, let's say that the Victor Oladipo that we get back looks as good as he looked at times for Miami when he played in those, 4 games last year, with more room to grow because hopefully, again, they did the surgery correctly. How much does that change the rim pressure shot profile for this team?
I think it's the X factor. That's the X factor this team needs. I don't want to rely on the Victor Oladipo situation because I feel like that's something where it should be more of a luxury. And then once we get him back, then we're going to be really happy about it. But you look at the numbers from last year, he was driving 13.5 times a game in Houston. In his 4 games with Miami, I believe he was driving about 9.5 times a game. So the answer is there. Like, we need a tertiary guy to get you the rim pressure. And Victor can absolutely do that, albeit in a smaller role. He can still do it. And that's what you really need. You don't have someone that can Lowry can do it situationally. Victor can do it pretty much anytime he's on the floor, assuming he's healthy. So I don't want to try to gas up the addition. He's been my trade deadline addition for this Heat team the entire time. I think that's going to be the boost that this team gets, and it might be the best trade deadline acquisition out of anybody.
They're totally going to use that line of thinking too, by the way. Once they don't make a move at the deadline because they're not.
But it's the right answer, right? Like, you have this guy.
I get it.
Be a fringe all-star.
Gad, you're killing Adam's trade deadline shows right now. Okay, so don't do that. We've got to gas up the trade deadline shows. The Heat are going to make a ton of moves at the deadline. Follow everything that Adam Barai does from all 12 of his Twitter accounts. But yeah, I mean, most likely this is going to be the main addition. I want to go to Brady on this to go to Gad because this is a little bit of a hockey assist, but we'll get to Brady more in his article in a second. But I mean, you've talked about Vic a lot, Brady, in terms of what he can add from a rim pressure standpoint. Did you expect Lowry? I guess I'll go to Brady on this. Did you expect Lowry to put more pressure on the rim?
Yeah, I would definitely say that I expected to see that more. Like, I felt like we knew, as Alex said before, like that was the pull-up guy. Like, I felt like we thought he was the pull-up guy even over Tyler Hero. I think the usage kind of changed that just because Tyler has the ball in his hands more than anybody when he's on the floor. So we're trying to change things. But I do think I expected them to get to the rim a bit more. And I think with Gad's numbers, what makes it so interesting is we constantly talk about the three-point shooting. Like, three-point shooting of this team fell to middle of the pack. The reason they got threes last season, of course, it's Duncan Robinson. It's them getting the dribble handoff. It's them doing so many good things. But it was also them getting to the rim and kicking out and kind of creating from there, where if drives are down and you're not getting down there as often, obviously three-point shooting is probably going to go down on a team that has some of the best driving kick guys with guys like Jimmy, guys like Kyle, and Bam has done it a lot as well. So it just feels like that's just a good place to start. Like, if we're talking about a baseline of it being 13-7 and there's room to grow in so many areas, and we talk about them just coming out strong in many spots, that's one of them that they haven't. And I think it's probably a good thing because you're talking about a good spot they're in and they have a lot of room to grow offensively. And it's kind of a fallback plan to kind of saying the three-point shooting can go up if that goes up. So I'll pose this to Gad. Do you think the three-point shooting can go up? Like, do you think that's going to be a big reason that things can change just off of rim pressure?
Yes. I think the biggest thing with this team is they've had some of their best players like Lowry, Duncan, and Bam. They've all struggled as jump shooters. And you also have a team that has struggled with rim pressure. They just need one or the other to click. They don't need both. If they get both, this team is virtually unbeatable, but not every team is perfect, right? But what they really just need is either rim pressure to be figured out, which I don't think is all that much likely until Victor Oladipo's back, unless Gabe Vincent just turns into Fred VanVleet 2.0, which, hey, I'm not going to say anything about that.
Don't sleep on Gabe now.
But the realistic pathway for this team to get to a close to elite offense, although they're already playing good offensively, is just purely hitting shots. We have tough shot makers. We have contested like movement shooting on this team. We just really haven't had that result yet. And I think at a certain point, the numbers are really, really bad right now. At a certain point, there will be a correction, and it's going to look like a beautiful thing that might end up in a win streak for Miami because they have some talent. Like Lowry's shown for years he's a good shooter. Duncan has a ridiculously large sample size of being an otherworldly shooter. And Bam has a 2-year sample size of being a at least serviceable jump shooter from the mid-range. And we're not getting that right now. So once those happen, this team will be in great shape.
Yeah, I think you perfectly articulated kind of when I look at one fell swoop through the first 20 games, like the fact that 6-1 start, like the way that they played and the things that they got to know that they have that gear, to me, I think is a really good sign. And to your point, when the shots start to fall, they can get to that gear more frequently. So to me, that's a huge takeaway from the first 20 is just, the sheer way that they started the season.
And the other point that you've made, and I know, I think this is bears watching, is it seems like Lowry will apply pressure to the rim when there's no other choice. He's done it in games, and I know you statistically quantified this, that he's driven more in games where he doesn't have one of the other guys out there, and then he's also done it more at the end of certain games. Again, when there's been foul trouble, my frustration with Kyle, and I got into this on our Twitter Spaces last night, is that when he's out there on the floor with, without the Heat's other stars, okay, and last night against Chicago, he didn't have Hero. Bam is not Bam, and I think that's something we need to continue to monitor and discuss because either the knee or something's off, okay, and Jimmy was not really totally plugged in. And, and then he's on the floor with basically Strus, Gabe Vincent, two ways from last year, Caleb Martin, a 2-way from this year, and Dwayne Dedman. Okay. A guy that got off his couch last year. Okay. I know he doesn't like when we say that, but I mean, he wasn't playing. He's playing with 4 guys who were essentially minimum guys. You're the $30 million player. Attack. Okay. I mean, you're the guy with a pedigree. You're the guy who's won a championship. You're the guy that they went out and got.
You really heard the quarterback.
He heard you, Ethan.
Well, he did I will say this every time. I don't know what it is. Every time I call him out on Twitter or Spaces, he goes off. So I guess I should do that more often. But it's not that I don't appreciate what Lowry provides. I mean, I was pushing for the signing, but it's just certain times it's like, okay, more like there's no one else there. It's like, look around. Okay.
You know who he reminds me of a little bit just on that point? Mm-hmm. Jimmy in that first season here, where like,
yes.
It was like he would just pace himself so much as like the playmaker and then wait till score like towards the end of the second half. And Lowry just does it at an even higher degree because he's been that point guard for so long. And I think he's kind of conserving, kind of ramping up towards the end of the season, towards the playoffs. And that's part of it right now.
All right. We want to get to the defense here with Gad in a second, and then we're going to transition to Brady's article after that. Before we do, though, we got a new great local sponsor based in Coral Springs, and it's called Intense Nutrition. Intense Nutrition. This is the place you want to go. Go up and say hi to Mike and everybody else there. This is the place that you want to go if you're in one of those strip malls. In these spots, I've had a bunch of people reach out and say, "Oh, we go there."
A little bit because Chicago definitely outworked us on the boards in that game. The Heat were tied for first with the Utah Jazz, who are a notoriously great rebounding team led by a notoriously great rebounder in Rudy Gobert. So the rebounding for this team, which looked like it was going to be an issue going into the year. I mean, we have a really small, our starting lineup is about like 6'5" when you average everything out. They can rebound. This is a well-coached team. They do a lot of things great on defense, and don't really need numbers to tell me that, but it is nice to see the numbers supporting that argument because a top 5 defense and you aren't really shooting well, there's a lot of room for growth for this team.
Yeah. One thing, and I want to have these other guys jump in on this, but one thing I thought we'd see less of because they have better individual defenders this year is zone. And then the Chicago game, I mean, again, I feel like you guys have better eyes than this, than I do. But it seemed like they were playing a hell of a lot of 3-2 zone, right?
It was like a trapped into a zone, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, it felt to me like Eric was flipping defenses constantly in that game, right? And so I'll go to either Gad or Brady on this, and I know I'm giving away the ghost a little because we're going to talk about this with Brady after the break, but it does feel like even though the personnel has changed significantly, like Eric is still tinkering there.
Yeah, he's definitely going mad scientist. This is definitely more of a Brady question because my man is literally elite with the X's and O's as he's always been. But I just think a lot of what he's doing is catering his approach, the defense that they're running, to the personnel that is on the floor. Like, you have Gabe, you have Caleb on the floor. You want to put like 3/4 court pressure because they can hound guys defensively and make you get into your offense in the shot clock much, much later. And then if Billy Donovan can only run like 2 sets for the Bulls, for example, that's a good thing for the Heat because they can probably guard 2 sets. But if you have to go 3-4 rotations deep, then maybe it doesn't work as well. But I'll let Brady chime in on this as well. I feel like that's really what we're doing, is just trying to maximize the skill set that is currently on the floor, which is what great coaches do.
Brady?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is what you said before when you said about them flipping defenses, because it almost looks like a 3-2 at times, but then it's also a 2-3 where it's just like the bottom guys playing so high up. Then there's possessions where Dedmon's basically at half court and it's just rotations on the backside. And it basically turns into man because everybody's just going kind of crazy on the backside. Like, that's Spoelstra's like home base. Like, that's where he likes to be. He likes to be kind of where he can has the personnel where he can trust, even though Dedmon's not the fastest guy, he knows he's smart enough to get back in his position. And like Gad said, they're catering to their guys that are on the floor at certain times. Like, they basically called, I feel like Caleb Martin's basically the Andre Iguodala of last season in a lot of ways. Like, it just feels like, and especially it starts with the 2-3, the 2-2-1 press and the 2-3 zone, where Gabe Vincent, if he entered the game last season, it was automatically going to be a press in the zone just because of his ability to stop the ball, Iguodala's ability to stop the ball. And I felt like we thought there wasn't going to be as much zone because we didn't think they had an Andre Iguodala to put at the top. Like, you're not putting Jimmy Butler at the top of a 2-2-1 and putting that type of pressure on him, kind of wasting his energy. A two-way and Caleb Martin, who's highly capable of doing that, you'll feel very comfortable in doing it. So I just feel like the personnel changing and then being able to use these different guys kind of change some things. But either way, they still have to use their offensive guys no matter what. Like, I feel like there's top 5 defense for a reason, but like pushing out Max Strus outside of a rotation to kind of tend to that, it seems a little crazy at times, but it just shows the theme of this team.
Alex, I want to let you jump in here because I do think that one of the things that drove Heat fans crazy last year was the soft switching, and particularly Bam. And it does seem like he's still doing it. I know I'm going into the strategy thing here a little bit, but we'll do this and then we'll get into more on the offensive side. It seems like he's still doing it, but it seems like it's more his choice, right? Like, how do you? I'll go to. I think Greg and I will both defer on this to the three of you. Like, why is that happening, and is that good?
So before I get into that, because that's definitely a good conversation, back to what we were just talking about right now, the zoning stuff. I've noticed a lot of it was coming in these 4-guard lineups too. They've been throwing out, especially before the Chicago game where Strus was kind of back in the rotation. But either way, right, he's not really a 4. If he's out there as a 4, it's still small ball. And I just noticed that ever since Keith has gone out, and especially more in these past few games, they've been kind of ramping up the mad scientist stuff. And I'm good with it. Like, I think trying it against different teams, and especially, when you've got certain guys missing, it just makes sense to do. Like, these guys, like Brady said, are capable of doing it. Caleb Martin is in that Iguodala position, in that Derrick Jones Jr. position, where it's like they know how to be there at the top of the zone, very active hands. So I'm good with it. As far as, something that you could throw out in short spurts. Now, the Bam stuff, I don't think it's his choice. I still think it's a coaching thing because most of the time it's happening when they're just switching everything. And they've done a whole lot of that this season, as opposed to in the past, maybe they've kind of tried to keep Bam, sometimes they'll switch 1 through 4, but that was more, tied to Hassan Whiteside and other bigs who just couldn't move, like Myers or Kelly, right? That's less of a Bam thing. But in general, they're switching everything a whole lot when they're not doing these other types of defenses like zoning and trapping. And I feel like that's just what's going to happen. This team, however, as much as I'm not a fan of the soft switching or whatever, they're pretty good at targeting like when they're going to actually switch. Like they're pretty good at noticing when there's a mismatch, although there's been a couple of times at the end of games, specifically that Washington game where it felt like they weren't helping out enough. They're really good at figuring out what mismatches to not let happen. And so I think they're really smart, and also they can guard up so well. Like we saw yesterday with Vucevic, right? They were switching all over the place, and every time Jimmy was there, he held his own. Lowry held his own. Even Duncan did a pretty good job holding his own, and PJ is going to hold his own versus the big man. So I just think they're really built, and that's why Spo ends up doing it as kind of his base defense. Is they've got a team that is really built to switch, and it takes away energy from guys having to constantly fight over.
I think it's a fun question to say, is it Bam doing it or is it by design? And I don't want to get too far into scheme, but I will say that the Heat social media account points out that Bam is the #1 switch defender in the NBA with 59 switches over #2. And that's like front and center on the flyer. So I think that it's probably by design.
Bo dug up that stat with the shovel.
Yeah, he sent it to Coop, and then Coop sent it over to the media account. No, Coop does incredible work. Okay, one more thing, and then we're gonna go to Brady. I just want to see: is there any way to quantify, Gad, how good PJ Tucker has been? Is there any number that speaks to it?
That's tough. You could probably look at like charges drawn, individual rebound percentage I was looking at, and he's pretty up there for being an undersized 4. Whenever he boxes out, the Heat get the rebound. That's pretty much what, and he boxes out pretty often. I didn't cite that in the article or whatever. If he was a bench player, he would be on my Culture Minutes segment for the post-up show, but that's a conversation for another day. PJ Tucker would definitely be like all-time culture player, though. Like that, he would historic ratings if you want some numbers for that.
Well,
But
I think Leif has those numbers.
You know the thing about that, Gad, is and this is one of the reasons I want to do this exercise, is because the different ways to analyze basketball now. Whether it's the statistical or the strategic or the eye test, it all sort of comes together with him, because I remember Brady and I were at the first scrimmage together, the first open scrimmage, and we're both watching PJ. And the first thing I said, and again, I don't have the eye that you guys have on this, particularly Brady's eye on this. First thing I said was, they're going to get every rebound this year because he's just going to stick his ass out and blocks everybody out. And that's pretty much what happens. I mean, he doesn't have to get the rebound to create the rebound opportunity for Miami. And I think if you look at it, and that is why I think we're going to talk a little bit more about Bam as we go forward here, but that is why Bam's rebounding decline to me is concerning over the past 3 weeks, because he should be collecting a lot of rebounds, because he has a much better box out guy next to him than he had last season when it was Trevor Ariza, right? Who was, I mean, let's be honest, Trevor was a skinny 3 playing the 4. He's got a guy now who's a legitimate 4, even though he's undersized from a height perspective. And so Bam was grabbing all these rebounds early, and he's not now. And to me, that speaks to a potential health issue that he's having with the knee, because the rebounding numbers coming down, I think, is most indicative, because Bam should be lucking into 11 rebounds a game. Okay. Just the way that they're boxing out and as many missed shots as they're forcing.
And he was early. That's why it's like there's something weird there.
Yep, absolutely. All right, listen, hold the takes.
Number on this, by the way, just to further what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So the Heat have been in the top 3 in rebound percentage all season, and I believe they still are, even after this last Bulls game where they got destroyed on the boards. But I just did a quick search with I just threw a filter on there. I wanted to see where they're at in rebound percentage in the last 3 weeks. I wasn't thinking of a specific game, but something like that. Last 3 weeks they're 15th in rebounding percentage. So
I think it's Bam. I think if you're looking for the direct corollary, it's likely Bam. All right, we've got something new for you.
All right, you can listen to the rest of the podcast here on the YouTube channel if you want to finish it. The second part, the Brady segment, which was really interesting as well. But now we're going to get ready to watch the game. Again, this is starting 5 for the Miami Heat: Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, PJ Tucker, and Kyle Lowry. So no Jimmy Butler tonight, no Tyler Hero, as Brady reported earlier today. So Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin, and PJ Tucker. Those are the starting 5 tonight. Nikola Jokic will be available tonight for the Denver Nuggets. Of course, he's going to be starting in tonight's game. So there you go. That's all we have right now for the pregame show for today. And remember to join us at Pace and Spaces during halftime. As soon as the second quarter is over, go over to Twitter and join us there. We're going to be doing the Pace and Spaces from the Biscayne Bay Brewing account today. So go ahead and join us with Sean, Tony, and Marco. And then right after the game, right after the fourth quarter is over, come over to the post-up show hosted by Royal Shepherd here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Have a good night. Enjoy the game, and we will see you later tonight here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Bye-bye.